Welcome to Schmidt List, where we inspire and educate emerging leaders by bringing you conversations with the best experts and thought contributors in technology and design. Thank you for joining us today. Now let's listen in as your host, President at Foundry Kurt Schmidt, speaks with this episode's inspiring leaders.
Laura, how are you?
I'm very well, Kurt. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So tell me about the work you do, Laura, and who do you do it for?
Well, I'm the founder of Passion Collective, and we help professional women rediscover their passion and purpose. So we're all about helping typically mid-career women really reconnect with the things that they love to do and the things that really light them up.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And do you find that it is a struggle for everybody, but for women, especially in terms of work-life balance? Is there a difference between what you've seen?
Oh, I mean, we could do the whole podcast on this.
Well, we might have to do more than one.
So I don't want to speak for the entire female population.
Sure. No, you are the representative today, Laura. So yeah.
But we, in our community, we've got about 9,000 passionados globally. Women are, absolutely taking on an incredibly heavy burden at work and in life. Often, as we know, it's the women who are picking up not just the physical workload, but a lot of the invisible workload as well. So that emotional bandwidth.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely at the moment, I would say, a continued sense of heaviness that I'm seeing certainly with professionals all over, but professional women in particular. It's, we're in the pandemic and there was a lot of conversation, obviously, about the additional burden that women were picking up in the household. And that doesn't really seem to have shifted. And actually, with the return to office that many organizations are enforcing now, there's almost additional stress and a resetting of boundaries and a resetting of expectations about what we all should be doing, but particularly women. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at, the space in our day that we have to be able to pursue the things that light us up, it feels like those margins are getting smaller and smaller, whether you're a man or a woman. That certainly is sort of the pace of life at the moment, for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. I see this a lot in the women who work for me and my wife, the women around me, that exactly what you just said, those margins seem to be getting smaller where you can reflect and take time to take stock of where you're at, what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. So if you do run into those folks, I mean, what's your first piece of advice that you usually give them to sort of start to chip away at that? Is there a magic word you can give them that just changes everything? Or tell me about the process.
I'm actually counting the words on my fingers. It's not one word, but typically I use 3 words when somebody is coming to this point where they're realizing, what am I doing? Typically that's the conversation that I typically have with some of these women.
Sure.
What am I doing? I've got this, this great career and it's successful on the outside. I've done all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, but hold on, wait a minute. Where have I gone in all of this? And, how do I actually figure this out? I don't want to go backwards, so how do I figure it out? And one of the first things I always say is you need to say to yourself, I deserve this. I deserve this. And by this, you need to define what that is, right? But I certainly believe that we all deserve to lead happy and fulfilled lives. And we deserve to do the work that lights us up for the majority of the time. We deserve to do the things that we love in our spare time. We deserve to discover our creativity and express our creativity in different ways. And often, women in particular, we're very, very good at serving others first. Society has set that expectation for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's very difficult sometimes for women, and particularly professional women, to put themselves first and to say, no, I actually deserve this. This is something that I have to do, that I must do. So yeah, 3 words.
That's great. Well, and some of the best advice I've ever gotten is that you're not alone. You don't need to go through this by yourself, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's why, I started with a community. Idea of a community is, different to networking, obviously. Community is all about shared belief and linking arms together and having each other's back. And also, looking ahead and really trying to create something together. And in our community, we see women say exactly that. And frankly, that's the whole reason I started Passion Collective in the first. I thought I was going absolutely bonkers. I am a supposedly successful woman and I have this wonderful family and all the things,
You've checked all the boxes.
Yeah, no one was talking about like, hold on, wait a minute. And I felt like I was the only one who was going, hold on, wait a minute. And obviously that's a massive ego moment to think it's just me. But honestly, I felt very isolated in this. I wouldn't even call it curiosity back then. I would call it questioning and thinking, hold on, I've done 15 plus years of this. Like, what do I do now? And I wanted to have that conversation with other women. I wanted to start, talking about this because this was before Brene Brown was on Netflix, talking about shame and vulnerability. We didn't talk about this stuff over martinis at happy hour if we're enough to have them.
Right.
But I absolutely think that, this idea that there are things in life that we do have to do. We have to pay the bills. We have to take care of the people we love. And we want to do that. Most.
Yes.
But there's also this feeling and I think this massive reality that many of our passionados get to, and I got to pretty early on in founding the community. And it's this realization that we truly do only have one life to live. Like, this is it, people. This is it. And
go around.
Rather depressing if you think about it for too long, but we almost got 30, 40, 50, 60 years to figure this out. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it next week. I'll figure it out. I'm not as important as taking my kids to soccer or, getting that deliverable done to my boss. And those things are important, but you are equally as important. And you living a purposeful and energized life is incredibly important, not just to you, but to the people who you interact with.
Right. Because how you bring your whole self to those things, if you're bringing half of yourself because you're not happy with the other half, it can be a bit challenging, right? So let's talk about self-care a bit. I mean, there's the obvious things, right? Like, take a nap, eat junk food, do things that are bad for you. But tell me about some of the positive self-care things that you suggest to people in terms of being able to really actually get to the core of what might be troubling them.
Oh, well, I really do think that it's down to the individual to figure out what works for them, right? There's so many, certainly on social media, there's so many memes, self-help gurus telling you to just meditate every morning. And it's
right. Meditation. Do that and it solves everything, right?
If you've got 4 kids and if you're getting up at 3:00 in the morning to do, and there are so many girls, they're getting up at 5:00 in the morning to do the laundry, to do the day prep, to get the lunches done, maybe get a quick workout in, probably not. Before the kids wake up and they're doing that, and then they go to their day job. I mean, some of this advice that you see out there is unrealistic, right? So I never like to be like, well, it's easy. You just do these 3 things and get up at 4. I do think that what has helped me as somebody who is on this journey of figuring it out, capital S, capital I, capital O, is first of all, giving yourself some space to really reflect on what does light you up. And often when a new passionado comes to us, or I'll have an introductory conversation, the question will be, what do you love to do? And often so many professional women, there's this pause.
They don't know.
And it's like, I don't, because there's no, that's the problem, right? Is that we've got ourselves into these situations where we're serving many other masters and we're not filling ourselves up with certain things. So certainly what has worked for me in the past has been taking the time to reflect and journal and really think about the things that light me up. And the challenge with that is if you're stuck and someone tells you to do that and you don't know what those things are, you look at a blank page, right?
Yeah.
So a way to sort of get yourself into the right frame of mind is really to think about how you want to feel on a daily basis versus what you want to accomplish. We have been trained with to-do lists, with quarterly deliverables, with performance reviews, with you bloody name it. It's, what have you done today? How you doing? So what do you do? There's all of that, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was a huge wake-up call when I was, thinking about this idea of Passion Collective. Part of it came from my realization that some of the things that I love to do, so I love to write. I didn't write anymore. I was writing decks. I was really good at writing PowerPoint decks, certainly for other bullet points. Right? I love to host social things. And I wasn't doing that either because, everyone was scattered and living in the suburbs. And, I love to read. I love to, immerse myself in art and new things. Wasn't doing that either. So my thought became, well, hold on, wait a minute. What if I started pulling that all together? And that became Passion Collective, right? And the feeling for me was a sense of fizziness. Like I just had this word fizzy. I want to feel fizzy inside. And I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that with my work and my life, I was flat.
Yeah.
But I wanted to feel fizzy. So you'll notice with a lot of our Passion Collective programs, we've got buzz session, we've got morning buzz, we've got mini buzzes. So it became about a buzz, about an energy that I wanted to feel on a daily basis. And so for me, getting closer to what I actually felt led me to some of the things that I used to do that actually I used to feel really good with those things.
Yeah.
That led me to, I wonder whether I could still do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, is that self-care? Sure. Because you're
100%.
with your emotions and what you want as an individual. We are told to feel so many things. I think at work, the massive problems that certainly I've experienced in previous workplaces is either this expectation that you're supposed to show up with a fixed grin on your face and being 100% positive or neutral, just having sort of the face of nothing. Because heaven forbid, you have a bad day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that out there still. So we talk a lot at Passion Collective about taking off your armor when you come to a Passion Collective community gathering. Take off your armor, just come as you are. And I think for professional people, that armor that we wear at work, that we carry into our lives, it's a huge act of self-care to actually start taking that armor off and really getting in touch with the way you feel. And yes, it is woo-woo. For everyone who's listening, they're like, this is yeah. Yes. Some of the stuff, you're going to have to get a bit woo-woo.
Well, if I go there and you're charging crystals and burning sage, then while you're taking off your armor.
Well, right. And sage, I'm not very good with fire and things. So I probably, but some people might want to run a marathon to figure it out, And also, thing I think with self-care that is super important, especially when you're restarting this journey, is so much of what we see on social media is making us believe that this is a 30-second job or a quick meet, or there's even a defined outcome at the end.
It's just one ebook away, Laura.
Exactly.
Or one online course away.
I just saw another one this morning, actually. I think it's Martha Beck's. It's like only $347 over 6 weeks and you'll be calm and anxiety free. And I'm sure it's amazing, right? And I'm not criticizing that. I just think that you need to have a perspective of this is a jigsaw puzzle that I need to figure out pieces of. And maybe the Martha Beck course on calm is going to be fantastic for you. For me, it was some of these books that you see behind me that I dug into, and they just really made me think, So I think it's being open-minded, but really getting in touch with what you want to feel. And that can be actually quite a hard thing to do, especially if you're in a place where you're not feeling those things.
Well, it can feel selfish, right? It can feel like you're being selfish, and that's a challenge right there.
Well, 100%, Kurt, you feel selfish, but you also feel that, I don't know, maybe this was just me. Maybe we'll get it. But as I started really, really getting honest about how I wanted to feel on a daily basis, there was this realization of, I'm going through most of my days not feeling this way. It was definitely this come to Jesus moment of,
what have I done?
Yeah. And then, well, that's it, Kurt, because we spend 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, right? Building the career, making the sacrifices, putting in the hours. And there is this moment where, you question it and you start to get really curious about it. And I think that is often a point for people where they do stop and they get scared and they think, well, I want to feel this way and I want to do these things, but hold on. And there is almost this self-shaming that we do about the choices we've made and where we are. There isn't enough acknowledgement that we're incredible and we're amazing. We just need to get back to ourselves and figure out who we want to be. I think the other thing that's tricky about it is you do realize, as I certainly realized, it was almost this question of who have I become?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What
am I all about?
These things. And it's like, do I feel like me anymore? I don't know whether I feel like me. And so there is some of that digging you've got to do, I think. And you've got to be really honest about all of these things.
Well, and historically we have, we're kind of bred that way, right? We go to school and they give us grades for doing a good job. And so when we enter the workforce, a lot of people sort of give a chunk of accountability for our future to the business that we're working for, the job that we have, right? You're going to provide me the benefits. You're going to provide me a certain amount of time off. You're going to provide these constraints to my life that I now have to work within. And I think that teaches us over time that, if we just keep climbing that ladder, we're going to get more from our benefactor, which is whatever job it is. And that's going to provide us more and more happiness. And so to your point, if I check all the boxes, I got the family, I got the 2.5 kids, I've got the electric lawnmower, I got the dog and a cat and a goldfish. I've checked all the boxes into what, I've dreamed up as happiness. And now I'm not happy. That the first thing I see so many people do is there's something wrong with me. There's, in a bad way, right? Like I'm not appreciative of all the things that I have. And now I should feel guilty for that. And so just even getting over that hump it could just be an incredible challenge.
Yeah, that feeling of I should be grateful is really powerful. And most of the time, we should be. Let's just call it effort. The organization is a highly privileged place to be for us, right?
Yes.
We can talk about meaningful work and not working 3 jobs to pay the rent and doing the things you have to do. So I do think often actually, we should be grateful. I think the challenge that certainly women we put on ourselves is the should becomes very, very heavy and it becomes all peace. You can still feel gratitude for what you've achieved and what people are giving you and the opportunities you have. For me, it's a yes and situation. You don't have to blow everything up to become happier and more fulfilled in your life. A lot of this is additive. A lot of it is maybe cutting some things out that you don't want to do anymore or certain ways that you need to change or want to change your behavior or spend your time. But it doesn't have to be a blowing up of everything you've accomplished and everybody to lead a passion-filled life. I can say, if you're finding an hour at the weekend, I'll give you an example, Kurt. So in my mind, because I'm trying to pursue my passions too. I'm trying to figure out the things that light me up in addition to the work stuff. Is trying to follow my own philosophy. It's difficult sometimes. But, I've had in the back of my mind, I really want to paint. Like you see these people doing these amazing paintings and like, God, that looks amazing. Wouldn't it be great to throw some paint at a canvas and great. Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, so is it watercolor? Is it acrylic? Is it like how do I go to a class?
Where in the house am I going to do this where I can make a mess?
Messy, it's going to be a really messy curtain, and I'd have to clean it up. It's going to cost money. And then and recently I was clearing out my daughter's room and she had some of those coloring books, those mindfulness books. And I suddenly thought, well, what if I just did a bit of that? What if I just went out to Michael's and bought some books? Yep. And so I sat there for an hour, I listened to some amazing music and I colored in some coloring things. And the way it made me feel was amazing. There was this sense of flow. There was the fact that I didn't do it wrong because I was coloring in lines, right? So I can't mess it up. So that was very good. Who cares? And then I just looked at the end and I realized at the end of that hour, wow, that was time for me. It was a way for me to explore my creativity, limited though it was in lines and pink or blue. That was about the decision making that was happening. But the way we feel was it gave me space. It allowed my brain some time to really ponder and flow. And and at the end of it, I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. Well, it's pretty good, Laura. Nice job. So it doesn't have to be, these massive either explosions or these massive commitments that we have to do.
Right.
That helps with some of the shoulds, right? There's I should do it this way. I should be grateful. Sometimes it really is just about carving out and following those instincts and those little clues that your body and your soul is trying to give you on a daily basis. Like with the painting thing with me, luckily enough, I followed those clues and maybe I will get to a watercolor class or something. It lit me up for that moment. Does it pay the bills? No. This is a creative myself.
Wait, you're not starting an Etsy shop now? I mean, and a side hustle?
That would be a good idea.
That would be a good idea. There you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of those shoulds, and they're one of the many barriers we have in figuring this out for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so powerful what you just said, because it's the same advice I give people is if you don't know what the destination is or what it could feel like why are you even taking some of these courses or doing these things? Because I find, to your point, if you don't do things with intention, if you're just trying it on to see if it fits, versus I'm buying something for a specific trip, that I'm planning on going on, it can feel like throwaway stuff. It feels like you can just cop out of it and you can let all those other things in life sort of flood in and take over. So you don't have to commit to it and you don't have to do those things. Right. So again, I find that, especially with the women that are around me, it's a huge part of just giving themselves permission to do these things. Cause again, as a straight white male, I can create as much space and as much safety as possible. But that person also has to choose, to your point, to sit down and take that time for themselves. And where I find that at least some of the women, the professional women that I work with, some of their biggest challenges are other women in their workplace. And they struggle with the kind of keeping up with the Joneses sort of feel. Is that something that you run into with your community?
In our community, no, we're sort of...
No, not in the community, but you hear about in the community.
Well, yeah. I mean, I certainly experienced it when I was in the workplace. I don't think I was a big enough advocate for other women when I was in the workplace, certainly when I was just starting out. And the reason for that is, and this may sound like a massive excuse, but hopefully people will resonate, I didn't really know what that looked like. I didn't know what a woman supporting another woman looked like in the corporate workplace, especially when I was at the big financial services company and we were all in cubes. And frankly, politically, we were all kind of like pitted against each other anyway.
Of course, yeah.
Highly competitive environment. And, it was just all weird anyway. And there weren't very many role models of women supporting women in an outwardly way. Now I'm talking like 15 years ago. I think there is way more today. There's the whole hype movement. There's all sorts of amazing things happening, certainly on social media. But there certainly can be, I think, in the workplace, a lot of barriers to people figuring out what meaningful work means to them. And yeah, one of them is this fear of judgment from other people, completely human and normal. But honestly, most of the time, it's boxes that our organizations are putting us in. And, the idea that if we question the work we're doing within a certain role, they're going to think that I'm disloyal and I don't want to be here. And the reason that people think that is that organizations have made us think that.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I ran a workshop for one of our incredible sponsors, Atomic Data, a few months ago. And there was a senior woman in the workshop. Excuse me. We were doing an exercise called Reach Back, and it's part of our Passion Finder workshop. And it's helping you really reach back into your career and in your life to really remember some of the things that you really love to do. It's a fairly simple but powerful exercise. And she was a senior compliance person in the organization.
Very serious job, yeah.
It was serious. Like the buck stopped with her. And
she
remembered that she loved to, there was years ago, she created this project management system. So first thought is, well, that's a completely different discipline, right? How dare she, it's like very different. And my first thought was, well, how did you get to compliance then from project management? I actually asked her, she said, actually, I don't really know. And how many of us, Kurt, in our career got to a point and we look around and it's like, how did
we get here?
I mean, I followed opportunities. I said yes to the promotion. I did that, but
there was no plan.
Exactly. And it's the jungle gym here, right? And that's how you typically succeed. But this female leader, I could see it in her face. She was like, I really love doing that. I said, well, what did you love about it? She said, well, first of all, I think that system is still going. So I created something that helped long-term. So she's talking about legacy, right? Yeah. Talked about an element of autonomy that she had in building this system. And if you look at the academics behind passion, then this idea of autonomy is very, very powerful for people. Often, things that you're passionate about are things that you do have more control over, ironically. And so she's like, yeah, I really love doing it. She listed all these things. And I said, well, what's stopping you from doing it in this job? And that may be a completely obvious question because she was a compliance person. It's not her job, right? Capital N, capital H, capital J, not her job. And I happen to know the CEO, the amazing Jim Walford, who actually we just lost last month. And I said, well, why don't you just go to Jim? And she said actually that the company could benefit from this. So why don't you just go to Jim and tell him that you want to help with this? Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds very flip, but she was like, oh, maybe I could.
Yeah.
So again, there's a whole question there too of, okay, so now we're going to take on a whole bunch of extra work just to sort of do work where we care about in addition to our jobs.
Sure.
It doesn't always have to be that way, right? Maybe if there's a conversation with your leader about, look, is there a way that I could do a bit more of this because I'm really passionate about it and I'm really good at it? Is there a way that I can work that into my responsibilities? And maybe I could, remove some of these responsibilities.
All right. Well, maybe that boss can make space for it, right? You don't have to do it by yourself.
Exactly. Your organization may say, nope, sorry, there's the box, stay in the lane. That's what it is. And the larger companies definitely like that. But I bet in your organization, Kurt, if someone came to you and said, look, I see we've got a bit of a challenge. I did that 15 years ago and I loved it. Is there any way we could talk about maybe fixing it and I can help? Like that to me would be a really good thing. But it does come back to your first question, Kurt, about the balance and the fact that people's bandwidth is up to here right now.
Sure.
So even thought of, rediscovering, then identifying, and then actually pursuing the work that is meaningful to us in addition to the work we're meant to be doing, that's a huge barrier for people right now. And organizations have to be doing more to help their people explore this idea of meaningful work. I mean, for goodness sake, if your people are coming to you saying, I really love to do this work, it's a bit different to what I'm doing right now, but let me help. Why wouldn't you enable them? Why wouldn't you give them everything they need to be able to do the work they love to do? There's too much of this in the workplace. There's too much of this. Are you a fit for this box?
Sure. Yes.
And HR is probably listening to this and saying, yes, Laura, there's a reason for that. And I know that there's legal reasons for the boxes, but how can organizations and team leaders really work with their people to help them identify the things that light them up in a safe way where you don't feel disloyal? And it doesn't mean that you're saying to your boss, I hate my job. It just means that there are other things that you can do that can contribute to the success of the organization. So have that discussion with your people and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, my dad always told me you get 100% of what you don't ask for. So if you're not going out there and pushing those boundaries ever so slightly, right? You don't have to come in and, kick tables over and things to get your way. But if you're, there's ways to go about it. If you know your boss or your manager, or the person who is in charge of your position, there's ways to make those things known that these are areas you want to explore. And I think it also, it's something that people also have to take seriously, that if that organization cannot provide that for you, it might be time to look for an organization that can. And that's scary to some folks. But again, it doesn't mean you just quit your job and then start looking for a new job. You can start going out and passively talking to folks. And I always encourage people, you should always know what your market value is as an employee. And your market value doesn't necessarily come only from your employer. It comes from what other people are interested in investing in you as well. So throughout your career, it's not disloyal to go and have conversations with other organizations about what opportunities they might present to you. But I know some people are challenged with that. And something you brought up earlier, Laura, that I found really powerful was sometimes we do need permission to go and explore these things. And that's where I find like having a coach or a community where you can present these ideas in a safe place and people say, I don't see why you're not doing that. Or why don't you just do it this way? Because I know you mentioned, well, I don't mean to be flip, but sometimes it is just obvious. Like you're a very smart person. Like, why don't you just go and ask for that thing? I see it. And so I think that's really powerful to have either a mentor or a community or something you're a part of that you can bring these things to get that feedback is really powerful. And not these like only when there's an opportunity, because this is about a lifetime of building these skills, right? We're always going to be growing and getting better. So, just because you think you could reach the top of the mountain, that's not the point. I hope I never reach the top of the mountain. What's the point of climbing then? I'm enjoying the climb.
Exactly. And the other thing that's making me think of, Kurt, is, yes, absolutely. If you're in a safe environment, in a community or a small group, and they're looking at you and they're seeing things that you can't see,
yes,
then that can be really powerful. It can also be counterproductive, though. I mean, how many times have people said to you, Kurt, you should really do, you should,
Sure.
And I would really encourage people to pay attention to those moments. If someone says to you, you should really start a blog. And if your instant feeling is like, oh God,
no,
it's probably not,
Right.
The feeling is this weird sort of like mild terror, but also interested, curious, like sit with these feelings of what people are telling you should do and get really good at filtering through and deciding for yourself what is going to light you up, not what other people are telling you should be doing.
Right.
The other thing at Passion Collective that I'm really passionate about is, I often think of Passion Collective as almost the sprinkles. We're activating, we're the catalyst for, so many women in figuring this out. We don't go super deep and super long in our programming, mainly because a lot of our passionados have, an hour a week to focus on this stuff if they're lucky. They might get to go to one social event every month if they're lucky for work stuff. I do think there's immense power in, being part of a community or being part of a group, and then acknowledging that you only need to take one small step to keep going on that journey. A lot of what holds people back is they think, well, I've got to join this thing, and then it's going to be a program.
Right. I have nothing to wear, and there's
Just big women's network. I'm getting so many, people tell me about how much it costs, and there's these barriers to joining these things, and it just feels heavy, right? So sometimes it's listening to what people are observing about your body language and how you talk and act when you're talking about certain things, and they'll either say you should be doing that or you shouldn't. Take that in, and then there's also the fact of what's one small thing you can do. There was one passionata a couple of years ago that I was chatting with over coffee, and she was talking about how passionate she was about, she had a special needs child, about helping other parents with the things that she's learning as a special needs parent. And I did a should on her. I said, you should really start writing about this. Like, you don't need to do massive things. All the things you tell me, that could have just been 10 short blogs, And she did. She started writing about it. And then when she started writing about it, she realized, actually, this is beginning to help people. Then she actually ended up starting a nonprofit.
Wow.
Amazing. And she actually applied for one of our Atomic grants where we give cash and coaching to women every quarter who are pursuing their passions. And we gave her the grant, and she developed a nonprofit. And it all came from the stuff she already had. Like she already had that inside of her. Now, not everyone is going to want to put themselves out there and
at that level
use this stuff. It can be a hobby and it can be a creative outlet, and you can do it just for you, and no one needs to look at this stuff. But the key, having a space to take that small step.
Yeah. Well, I think the most powerful thing is what you said earlier, which is know why you're doing it. How do I want How do I want to feel? How do I want this to make me feel? Once I know that, once I understand and I can really visualize or excuse me, even feel it in some respect, what are the things that can get me there? And it could be exactly what you said. It could be something somebody tells you should do, or it could be something that, you randomly just pick up and run into. But yeah, I totally agree. So many people look at these things that seem like there's so many barriers to it. Like, I'm going to join this group, or I'm going to pay for this gym membership, or I'm going to do these things that, like I need a big change and it's this big explosion. And why doesn't it stick? Well, because you were chasing something that you didn't even know what you were chasing.
Well, exactly. And sometimes, the whole focusing on me thing can be a barrier for people too. And, a huge part of what we do at Passion Collective is also help people try and figure out the impact they want to make with other people. I see a lot of mid-career women who are saying, actually, I'm fine in my job. My job's fine. Well, my family's great. I've just got this real niggling feeling that I should be doing more to help other people. And I can't quite figure out what that is. And also,
that makes bigger impact.
Like, how do I do this? And I don't want to do the, making lunch kits or, the stuff that they already identified doesn't make them feel good, but they're trying to figure out how help. They don't want to mentor in a 12-month long program, sort of know what they don't want to do for themselves. So I think some of this is also recognizing, yes, it's how I want to feel, but also how can my talents help other people? How can my energy help other people? So with the example that you're giving there, I mean, you might be just fine in your role in an organization, but you might be getting super frustrated with, inequity of gender or race, for example. You might be getting really angry about it. And you just like feeling, like, listen, Laura, I know the feelings are right there. I mean, but what you haven't got to yet is how can you use what's unique to you to really help make a difference in that particular area? And that can be even more overwhelming for people. Because it's like, well, how can I help with climate change? I'm not,
right.
Close the gender pay gap.
What's little me going to do about any of that, those big world problems?
Yeah. But again, you may be part of an organization that has a DEI ERG. So perhaps there's a way that you can volunteer or join that committee. Look at nonprofits that may be able to use your help. Start writing and expressing your opinion if you can do that. There's always a first step you can take. You don't have to have it figured out right away. It's more important really to follow the clues that are being served up to you with your own emotions, but also your reaction to what's happening to world events. Now, sometimes you may also have to totally shut that down to preserve your sanity and your self-care, right? So it's also a question of asking yourself, what can I do and how much do I truly want to do? And then it's giving yourself permission again that is fantastic. That's good. If it's only an hour, a quarter to help with the DEI happy hour every month at work.
Great place to start.
Stop judging yourself that you should be starting a nonprofit or, running for president. That it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
But this has to be about you feeling the way you want to feel and making the impact that you want to make and doing some small things to then continue to find those discoveries along the way. Because you're going to keep learning the more you do.
Yeah, I love it. Well, speaking of next steps, if I want to know more about Passion Collective, because it sounds like an amazing community, how do I find out more? Where do I go? How do I learn more, Laura?
Super easy. It's on the interwebs. And so I know this amazing technology. So we have passioncollective.co, not .com, co, and that's got a whole bunch of stuff on it. It's got our events. It's got some fun content. We have a series called Life Myths that I write every once in a while. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can read. You can get inspired by passion stories. We've written almost 100 stories that highlight women who are pursuing their passions. You can apply for a grant. And by the way, the grants aren't for big highfalutin things all the time. You may want to start a creative hobby and you may want to sign up for a class and apply for the grant. Take a look. We also have our on-demand platform, and that's where our sort of core passionados are. That's called passioncollectiveondemand.com. And that's a private community that you can join. You get everything included. So I'm actually losing track of how many events we're doing this year, virtual and in person. We did one yesterday that was incredible about healing our lives. We've got a morning buzz next week. You get everything included and you get a whole bunch of exclusive stuff in there as well. So that could be a really nice resource for you if you're looking to have something consistent and a place to go where you can share and get inspiration.
No, that's amazing. Well, Laura, first of all, I want to thank you for being on the show and bringing your knowledge and experience to my audience. And second of all, thank you for the work you're doing out there to help brighten and lift other folks. I'm a big fan of the idea that, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if we can make a small impact, the rest can come with us. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
We hope you join us for more conversations in the future with leading experts in technology and design. Please contact us at schmidt-list.com and foundrymakes.com for more information.